Operated by Cosmic Cabinets, Brandon, Paul, and Logan are broadcasting the Breakdown Podcast live using their telepathic powers. My name is Brandon Miracle. If you look south of me in the video version, you'll see the beautiful face of Paul Anderson. If you look to the right of me in the video version, you'll see the beautiful face of Logan Welliver.
Me!
Thanks for clocking into the Break Room Arcade. On today's episode, recorded on April, was it 14th? 13th?
13th.
April 13th.
We have calendars.
We'll be talking about the recent slip that Nintendo is working on new hardware. Oh my god, we didn't know that already.
What?
We'll also be talking about Paul, who finished up Rise of the Tomb Raider, Logan, who began My Hero Academia, and me, that really didn't do anything this week. So just to launch things off, you two watched Final Space.
Yes! Mm-hmm. Yes! Final Space! Final Space! Final Space! Final Space! If you had to ask me right now to name off a good show that you should watch, I'd say Final Space. Watch Final Space! Watch Final Space! It's so freaking good! It's like emotional, and it's funny, and it's
Logan doesn't
witty,
like Final
and it's
Space
strange, and there's just so much to it, and it's so good. Watch Final Space.
Yeah, I looked for episode 7 like last night, and it wasn't available for me to stream yet, so I'm behind.
Oh, wow. I watched it.
Okay, well, let's spoil it for Brandon. Here we go. Just kidding.
No,
I won't
stop.
spoil it for you.
I haven't seen episode 7 yet. I'll probably watch that tonight.
The main character, Gary, he's the main character. Boom!
Wow! Yeah, if you haven't seen Final Space, show by Olin Rogers, it's on TBS right now.
If you like Olin Rogers, you will like it.
Yeah, pretty much. We're approaching the finale, so if you want to get in, maybe now's the time. We have, 3 episodes left now? Because it finishes on episode 10.
I will say, if you don't have like Hulu or you don't have cable like me, you might want to wait till all the episodes are out. I was able to watch the first 2 episodes for free, and then they kind of put a time limit after those 2 episodes, so I could watch like the first 5 minutes, and then I had to like log in through a network, and that only gave me access to the episodes that are currently available for like the next 5 days. So I'm not sure after 5 days pass if I'll be able to watch like episode 8 through 10 or not. I hope so.
Yeah, that would be nice. Outside of Final Space, did you guys watch any other movies or TV this week?
Oh boy, did I.
I did not. So, I mean, it sounds like Paul's got some things to say.
What do you got, Paul?
So, at my coworker's suggestion, shout out to Gary if he's out there.
Gary?
I hopped on Netflix and I started watching On My Block.
On Your Block. What's On Your Block?
So it's a Netflix original series. On the Block follows a quartet of bright, street-savvy friends who are navigating their way through high school, including all of the triumphant pain and newness that they experience along the way. Lifelong friendships are tested as Monse, Ruby, Jamal, and Caesar confront the challenges of adolescence and life in their predominantly Hispanic and Black neighborhood in South Central Los Angeles in this coming-of-age comedy series. That was a mouthful. And I didn't just come up with that on my own. I am reading off of the official description for the show.
I was about to say, good summarization. Wow.
No,
Wow.
I'm not that well spoken.
Wow.
So I started this yesterday, and I'm over halfway through. It's half-hour episodes, and there's only 10 of them, so it's not a huge time commitment. But man, it's a funny show, man. Oh. I wasn't expecting it to be like near as delightful as it is.
Are there any names that we know that are tied to it?
I don't think so offhand. I feel like the cast is all very, very young. The show starts, they're all in middle school, and then it kind of very quickly jumps to their first day of high school. And there's a lot of drama involved. So it's really easy to kind of
high school drama?
I don't know where that comes from.
Another Netflix original. Everything sucks.
You're banned from the breakdown. You can't come back here. That's ludicrous. That doesn't sound like something that would happen at all.
It balances the drama very well with comedy, though. That's one thing that I really gotta give props to like Netflix comedies for, is that like they're not afraid to get very heavy, but they always throw it back at just the right second.
Much like Final Space.
Heck yeah, man.
So you said that's on Netflix?
Yep. If you're looking for something to watch, I recommend it. I don't want to give away too much, but like the first episode had me like sold.
Sweet.
The very first episode throws in such a major like curveball at you, and it's just hard to just stop.
It sinks your teeth into you, or you sink your teeth into it.
I could have easily watched all 10 episodes yesterday and been perfectly happy with my night.
I mean, that's what I did with Everything Sucks. Sweet. I think that's all we watched this week outside of anime. Speaking of anime, Logan,
it's been a good week.
You started My Hero Academia.
My Hero Academia! I didn't get enough sleep last night because I wanted to watch more My Hero Academia. I think I'm about 7 episodes in at this point. And at this point, it's just the show it's going. It's moving right along. I love the pacing. I love how it's quick, like, it's like, hey, we're not going to waste your time with this build up. We're just going to like episode after episode. It's like, okay, you're on just like a different place, a different trial, a different facet of this amazing world of anime superhero quirks and people getting in each other's faces because I'm gonna be the best hero of all time, and other people are like, I'm gonna be the best hero of all time. I'm gonna do my best, and I want to save people. And the other people, I want to make money. I want to be famous. And it's just like, it's such now you guys will have to help me because I don't have all the characters' names now.
I still don't either. So,
but the main character,
for the most part, Midoriya,
Deku,
and his like rival. What's his rival's name?
Bakugo. Yeah, the way that Bakugo just has this raging hate for Midoriya is like it's such a compelling like match up, I guess, for lack of a better word, because my brain's too excited to function properly right now.
I've honestly, like the whole time I've been watching this, I've been waiting for him to go Sasuke, and I honestly really hope that he doesn't.
I don't think that's going to happen.
He's just a very angry hero.
That's one of the things I love about what they're doing with Bakugo. And Logan, you said you're episode 7. Where are you at? So I say things I shouldn't.
I believe the last episode that I can think of right now, what happened in it was they had the training exercise that was headed up by All Might. And
this is what I was going to reference. Okay.
Yeah, Midoriya was like, and he did the thing up in the air, and then it exploded all of the building. And then you're like, what is happening?
Okay, so John, that's what I was going to... That's what I was going to reference. Like, you know, they set up this rivalry between Midoriya and Bakugo so early on in the show, and they give you the first fight with them just right away. It's like right off the bat. You don't get that in a lot of other shonen.
Yeah, and their characters, like the content of their characters is very clear.
Mm-hmm.
It is obvious that Midori wants to be the best hero and that his nature is to protect, you know? And that's the kind of hero that you're cheering for. The one who is selfless, self-sacrificing, and he will do everything and try his hardest to make sure that, you know, whoever he is saving will be saved.
Oh, like that early incredible moment where Bakugo is trapped by the jelly muck monster, and he lunges out into the crowd and he headed straight for Bakugo, even though he has no quirks, no powers, nothing that can really contribute, but he goes anyway. And then you have All Might in the background. He's like, I forgot what it means to be a hero. This kid embodies what a hero is.
Right. It's so exciting. I have no shame in admitting that there has been a handful of moments in this show that have brought me to tears.
just because
Absolutely.
it's like so exciting or so overtly like encouraging and positive that you're like, oh no, I want to be a hero now.
You too have what it takes to be a hero.
Yeah, it's the same kind of feeling that I got from watching through Dragon Ball Kai for the first time. Like, Goku's like, I'm gonna get stronger. And like, yes! Oh yeah! You know, it's such a ride. It's such a ride. So I can't wait till I've caught up to, you know, through the first 2 seasons here. And
you're in for a treat because season 2 is twice as long as the first one.
What?
It somehow gets better.
Season 2 is twice as long as the first one.
Oh, God bless. God bless.
Yeah, and those incredible moments are like so frequent, but every time they're just as impactful as the last one.
Right.
You have that training moment early on when they first start at the academy where Aizawa is like, okay, you're going to show off your quirks here, and they have to throw the ball as far as they can. And Midoriya is like, well, I can't throw my arm out, and, you know, Mr. Aizawa doesn't want me to do that, so how am I going to fix this? And then he puts the all for one in just the tip of his finger, and I was like, oh my god!
That's the thing
amazing.
I love most about Midoriya, is just how, like, he wasn't powerful, but he made up for that in just sheer knowledge, and, like, he just pulls stuff out of nowhere, just ideas just in a split second, and figures it out just so brilliantly. Like, you never know what to expect with him, and he's such a great protagonist.
That was actually, you know, my first episode of Naruto. I was late to the party on that. Was Naruto versus Kiba during the Chunin exams. And that episode, that entire fight, is literally a moment like this, where Naruto, well, he quite literally pulls something out of his butt. But besides that, just like Naruto, like pulling something off that you wouldn't expect him to, him figuring out a way to win and then utilizing that. Those are exactly the kinds of feelings I get in My Hero Academia. But it's just like over and over and over again. I mean, this show really brings it.
You know,
the cool thing about that is that you have like the super strong protagonist that he has all this power, he can't control it, and so he slowly evolves, and he keeps growing and keep growing. Even though he has all this power, he has to figure out how, like, what to do with it.
It echoes Dragon Ball in that way, albeit a little bit differently. Whereas he's just trying to figure out, like, okay, it feels almost like he's gauging his power. Like, how far can I go without tapping in to this power, you know? And until absolutely necessary, that's when I'll go Super Saiyan, aka use my one for all power, you know?
Oh yeah. And that, you know, it's well, I guess that really isn't super common in Shonen. That really is something I think that it's exclusive to Dragon Ball, but now with My Hero as well. And
I'd say with this, like, to me, it mirrors Kaioken a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Just because, like, it will take him out of the battle if he uses it. It will injure the heck out of him, and so he has to use it sparingly.
The other cool element of One for All, too, is that, you know, we have All Might already as an example of what One for All can be when it's, you know, fully utilized. So we know the end goal already. We know what Midoriya will be capable of. We're just on the journey to get there. The show right off the bat says, this is the story of how I become the greatest hero of all time. And, you know, it's not, that's not a secret. This is where we're going to get. And we're just on the ride there. And it's so awesome.
Yeah, it's such an exciting show. I didn't really know what I was getting into. Obviously, I had the premise, but I guess I'm a skeptic, especially when it comes to certain mediums like anime. I'm very, very skeptical of any new show that I'm not familiar with. It usually takes a few recommendations before I'm like, okay, and then I have to like spend the time actually watching a few episodes before I'm like, I need to watch the rest of this. And so I've kind of gotten to that point. I mentioned to you guys earlier that this show, my younger brother Ethan has said that this show is in his top 5 of favorite anime, which, you know, if you've watched enough anime, like, you know, put it in your top 5, that's a pretty hefty statement right there, you know? Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that this show might work its way to my top 5 after I get a little bit more into it.
It already holds like a very like cemented place in my heart that just cannot be taken away from it.
I feel the same way. To me, My Hero Academia is an instant classic. If this show had been around when I was a kid, this could have ended up being my greatest show of all time. This has the potential, like, in my mind, to surpass the way I feel about Dragon Ball. And obviously, a lot of the ways I feel about Dragon Ball is fueled by nostalgia. So I imagine multiplying that with how good My Hero Academia is, and it's just like going to shoot to superstardom. I envy any child who's currently watching this in their younger age and, you know, their formative years. I envy that so much because it would be incredible.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a younger, much younger generation, you know, especially if you're not even like double digits, you know, 10, 11 years old, that, you know, you kind of miss the train in a lot of ways for, not that you can't go back and watch them, but for Dragon Ball and Naruto and some of these more classic, these classic shonen that are, you know, older than even we are. So I think I might echo that statement and say that this might end up being like a classic. This is something that once it finishes 10 years down the road, I mean, I don't know how long. I honestly hope it doesn't go on forever.
I hope it at least follows the manga run all the way to the end.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if it didn't at this point.
I'll be very upset if it doesn't.
Yeah.
John in the chat, I think, says something about Midoriya that is absolutely perfect. Midoriya is a sweet son, or sweet boy. His mom is proud of him. I think that's the thing that makes Midoriya so great, is he's a different type of hero. You have Goku, who's so fueled by being the best, just for the sake of being the best or getting stronger. And that's a lot in like Midoriya's rival, where Midoriya is more about just trying to protect people, and he cares about the people around him, where Goku's kind of selfish. And so I think it makes him a better protagonist.
He's a little similar to Naruto. They both have a similar background in that they were weak, maybe unwanted in their circles. But Naruto, I believe, later on, like, gains that attribute where he's there to protect his friends, because he didn't really have any friends to begin with. You know, where Midoriya had a few friends and just this willingness to be a hero, and he had an idol who he looked up to. But yeah, totally opposite of Goku. Goku does not care until like the absolute moment where something bad's gonna happen.
I mean, going back to that moment like early on where he saves Bakugo.
Yeah.
He saves a person who absolutely hates him. Like, if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about this hero, like, I don't know what else you can say.
It's the kind of role model I think anybody could use. You know, just think outside yourself and think about what's truly important, and put aside all your biases and just do what's right. And I think that's one of the things that's most exciting about My Hero Academia.
It's
aside
also,
from just the heart
it's got to be
it embodies.
It's got to be empowering for children, because you know, Midoriya is a student, had a, you know, not so great of a background, and then he's excelling above all these people he's known for a while. But he also has a teacher who is the greatest superhero of all time, who's also learning from him. So, you know, adults can enjoy this and find different meaning in those exciting moments, because, like I said, you know, when he saves Bakugo, All Might's like, oh man, I forgot what it means to be a hero, and then he learns from Midoriya in that moment. It's so incredible. You know,
John said in the chat, Goku's all about being the best buff boy.
That is true. we can gush about My Hero Academia all day, but there's one more anime. Oh, and third season has just started. We'll get more into that in the coming weeks. Shokugeki no Soma just premiered the second half of season 3, and I'm incredibly happy.
Oh boy!
You guys are gonna have to remind me what
start.
Shokugeki no Soma is.
Food Wars.
Okay, that's what I had an inkling. I was like, I think that's Food Wars, but I don't understand all this Japanese word stuff.
So we went from one shonen to another shonen. Obviously, this is a lot different because it's about cooking, and that might be one of the most exciting things about it.
Oh yeah.
The main character, Soma, Yukihira, is a lot different than Midoriya because he's just naturally gifted. He's learned a lot from his father and his upbringing about how to cook and what it means to cook, and the passion that goes into that.
He kind of reminds me of Goku.
A little bit, yeah.
He's very sure-footed. Even if he doesn't know exactly how he'll win, he remains confident until he succeeds.
Yeah. And, early on, it kind of seems like he has that Goku complex where his friends kind of come second to his ambition. But you kind of see a shift in that as the series goes on, and I think I like that direction for Yukihira a little bit more. It separates him from Goku, and it gives me a reason to like him outside of him just being good at what he does.
I feel like part of that is he believes in his friends. He sees the potential of them, and he knows they'll succeed on their own.
It's like, I don't have to worry because you're not going to fail. You're good enough as you are.
Exactly.
So the second half of season 3 premiered, which is great. I'm glad that they're doing it like this because beforehand, when I was watching this when it first premiered, I had to wait an entire year between season 1 and season 2, and an entire year again between season 2 and season 3. That's a long wait.
I wouldn't want to do that.
So we actually just had a 4-month break between part 1 of season 3 and part 2. Season 3 is actually a full 26 episodes like the original season. Season 2 was actually a disappointing 13 episodes. I like this format better. I'm willing to wait like the 4 months because that's not so bad. 4 months, new season starts, anime's back, and I can get back to watching it on a weekly basis. And it came at a good time too, with Dragon Ball Super just ending a couple weeks ago.
I'm curious how they'll push forward into season 4. If that's going to be a significant wait, is it going to be 2 13-part seasons?
I'd be perfectly fine if they kept doing it like that.
I'd be cool with them like doing a short break, a small chunk, short break, small chunk, and kind of keep that rotation going.
Kind of space it out a little bit more. Give the people who are writing it a little bit more time to develop it.
I think that is like solidified by just the way Japanese TV works. Seasons run in 13 episodes, typically. So, they'd have to find another show to fill its spot, and that means that show would also have to run on the same schedule. So I don't think that's super likely, but I do agree that that'd probably be the best route. Overall, I'm okay with what we're doing right now because I'm more than willing to wait just a measly 4 months between, batches of new episodes.
As long as new episodes come.
Yeah. And I'm glad there's shows like My Hero Academia, which are these long-form shonen, that aren't filling in all of the time between seasons with mindless filler. Just put the show on hold and then come back when it's time. That's perfect.
It seems like that's a problem that the Japanese animation market has kind of always had, and it seems like at least a few of these studios and publishers are kind of wisening up. Like, hey, maybe if we don't put a bunch of pointless crap out there, like we can actually spend money on making a better quality product.
You could definitely see like how that affected Dragon Ball Super for them constantly being under the gun every week. Instead of doing what My Hero's doing and maybe finishing all those episodes when there's a huge chunk of time that they have available that they can kind of pace themselves, make sure all the art looks good, and maybe not kill all your workers at the same time.
Yep.
That's not to say that they're probably not working on multiple shows at once. But
right,
I can't imagine being under that kind of pressure.
I think it's a better alternative to some of the other things I've seen studios do to kind of combat filler or avoid it, is just like they keep recapping things in the episode. So Naruto was awful about that. Black Clover and One Piece are the two that come to my mind because they start by like showing the last like 15 minutes of the previous episode, and then they'll show like 15 new minutes, and then that will be carried over into the next episode, and that'll be the beginning of the next episode.
Yuck.
It's kind of nice when you like go week to week to get that reminder of what happened last, but that's a little much.
You don't want to spend a significant chunk of your episode doing that.
Yeah, maybe like a minute at most, or a couple minutes.
I mean, that's what the My Hero episodes do, is they just have a short recap of the major points of the last episode.
Get you up to speed.
And then it's done in like 20 or 30 seconds. It's super quick.
Yeah, and then there's like a tiny bit of overlap between like the last few seconds of the last episode and the first few seconds of the next episode. Mm-hmm. And so I like how it does that, because it gives it a little bit more like continuity, like, oh, we're still here, we're still in this moment.
Yeah.
And okay, we're going to continue on from here.
I mean, rather than having like a whole season of like filler, I'd rather them do that recap style, but I'd still like ultimately prefer them taking a break, relaxing, and then coming back and just having it be new. Hit me with the newness. Less
episodes. Like, I'm sorry, some of these shows do not need 150 episodes, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they just don't.
You look at Naruto, which, did we calculate, was almost 50% filler? It was a sizable
40, I think.
chunk. Okay.
It's a really, really, like, I can't believe it. I couldn't believe the number when I saw it.
I think Naruto finishes at like 700 episodes, and such a huge chunk of those episodes are filler. It's unbelievable.
Since 700
that
episodes?
Just seems insane. Like, I feel like more of that time, it's like, okay, cut out half of those episodes. Can you fit in half of those episodes?
That's 400 episodes of actual series and 280 episodes of like filler.
And that's not counting the filler moments that take place in canon episodes, which there is plenty of. Where's Naruto Kai? Please, I need it.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully moving forward, people kind of steer away from filler, because it's not fun. Like, if you're caught up to the manga, just stop, just wait a while, you know? Mm-hmm. Or like maybe stop at the end of the arc and then wait until the arc and the next arc in the manga is almost finished, and then start up again, you know? And then focus on having a great show that's compelling, that people are going to want to come back to week after week. And then it's going to be easier to merchandise and market that thing, because it's easier to market something that's definitively good as opposed to something that's just filled up with filler, you know?
I'm hoping that
all these issues in the Japanese, like all these studios, people are working way too long and not getting paid enough. Well, maybe you guys should focus more on monetizing what you have already and getting more in, so you can actually pay these people better and have them work less hours.
I would genuinely hope that if they did something like that and they made a better product and waited a little bit longer in between to come back, that they would keep coming back. Because the thing that kills me the most inside is all the series that I've started that I absolutely adored and I saw so much potential in, getting cut short because they just stopped halfway through the actual run.
Yeah.
It happens with way too many different series. Like, start a series, take your breaks, make the most compelling show you can, get people watching, and keep coming back.
You know, anime is like super saturated on television in Japan. It's a very competitive market. So I can understand why they want to keep their heaviest hitters on all the time. But, you know, it hurts the reputation of the show. It hurts the overall quality of the show. Just pace yourselves, guys. It'll work itself out.
I feel like in a competitive market like that, it might be beneficial to be like, hey, we're going to spend less time. So that way, those moments in those weeks that the show is on, everybody's like, okay, it's time to watch this show. This show's first priority. I have these shows every week, but no, it's time for this show. I think there is value in having space. And I think this applies to a million different sections of people's lives. But having a little bit of space between two seasons, it's nice, because one, having that like delayed gratification is really rewarding. It's really rewarding to say like, oh man, we haven't seen Rick and Morty in a year and a half. Oh, here's season 3. Did you guys I was in for that. I'm not sure where you guys were with Rick and Morty at that point, but I finished season 2 and we had to wait a year and a half. And after a year and a half, I came back to it and I was like, and then they just dropped it, without any warning, and the whole internet freaked out. Like, that's great marketing. And obviously, they probably make tons of money off of Rick and Morty. And they hopefully they pay their animators well. Fingers crossed. I'm not too familiar with the industry.
Doesn't Japan have Crunchyroll?
It's not a very well-paying job in Japan.
Cable?
It is not a lucrative business at all, as it turns out. At least
Which
like when
really
you're working
sad.
on small time stuff. I imagine you have to be into the movies for that to really pay off. You have to be like a Hayao Miyazaki to really make the money.
Right.
And it's sad, but that's just the nature of the business.
Speaking of filler, One Piece.
Yeah, we should move on. Paul, you've watched some other anime this week.
Yeah, I'm starting to transition my anime schedule here, with like the spring simuldub starting. So I was watching My Hero Academia, which got off to kind of a recappy start. Shokugeki no Soma. I watched a new episode of Black Clover, which is all right, and then I sat down and I finished Blood Blockade Battlefront. And oh god, guys, I was gushing about it last week. Season 2. Oh, there's a lot of side characters that they really kind of bring to the forefront and show you like their personal lives around everything going on with Libra. And it made me enjoy the cast of characters outside of the protagonist so much more. And I just appreciate all these characters so much more now.
Is it concluded, or is there going to be more?
There's room for them to continue, I think. The manga's still on. I think they'd come back for 3rd season if they wanted to.
Okay.
Good.
I hope they do. It's such a fun and wacky, crazy show.
Did you watch that subbed or dubbed? Is it
I watched it dubbed.
Okay.
I think the last time you mentioned it, it piqued my interest. So
Sounded crazy.
It is. That's the selling point
on my
for
list.
It's got really great world building. Like, it's such a crazy rendition in New York City that anything can happen, and it just makes sense.
I love any show that does some really fantastic world building and tells you about the nature of what you're seeing. It adds a whole new depth. It makes me more immersed in that world, and it makes me more likely to come back, if it's really, really good world building. I think that's one of the reasons I really enjoy Steven Universe. Of course, man, you want to talk about some like weird release schedules. Steven Universe is just like, here's a new episode. And then they go dark for like a month or two. Here's another new episode. Like, what are you doing? Like, they're really crafting it piece by piece.
I guess.
It's kind of how they release shows like SpongeBob, just in like small batches every once in a while. There's just,
I feel like when you get to the episode list of SpongeBob, you have such a large back catalog you can keep cycling through and keep it fresh for people, and then just drop a new episode here and keep going back to like these other 800 or however many episodes they have.
Speaking of shows with large episode counts, I want to give a quick shout out to Pokemon, which will be premiering its 1000th episode next.
That's so insane.
And it's still just as big as it was when it started.
And is Ash still just as 10 as he was when he started?
I'm pretty sure.
It's cool. I really like that they're, just continuing with Pokemon. Every new generation, they're just like, here's a new anime series, and it's still Ash. And
I feel like it was kind of rejuvenated with Sun and Moon, too, because they completely went to a brand new art style that I think is better fitting for Pokemon. And they're not doing the traditional, oh, I'm going to go do all the gyms or I'm going to do all the island challenges. It's just kind of Ash at school and just, dealing with daily life as a Pokemon trainer.
Right.
They've been going and battling some Ultra Beasts, I've heard, and, doing some stuff that maybe they don't typically like to reach out and do, because we haven't had a traditional Pokemon movie in a while, and they tend to save the legendaries and that kind of thing for those movies, but now they're integrating them into the anime more, and I think that better suits it, and I kind of like that.
Yeah.
So good on them for that. The next Pokemon movie is Pokemon Everyone's Wish, or Everyone's Something. It is a sequel, I believe, to the Pokemon 20th anniversary film. So this is a new canon that is separate from the basic anime, where we're going to follow Ash and Pikachu on an adventure different from what we experienced on TV. So that's kind of neat.
I like that a whole lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's some questionable things about that first movie. I enjoyed it overall. But I look forward to seeing where they take it going forward. But congratulations, Pokemon, on 1,000 episodes. I've been a fan since the very beginning.
2,000 more, let's go!
Woo. Oh, wow.
Let's hope that means we're going to hear a Pokemon Switch announcement soon. There's rumors that might happen on April 26th.
I hope that if
those rumors are true, we will be covering that, and we will anticipate it.
Check us out when that happens, because we'll definitely be talking about it. Any other anime this week before we move on?
Actually, there's a lot of anime, but I haven't watched any of it.
I'll have a lot more to talk about going forward. Like I said, that simuldub schedule, I finally saw Funimation's official schedule. All the animes that are going to be airing right now. And there's a lot that I'm following. I didn't think there was that many that'd be interested in. Just I kept going. I was, I've seen that. I'm going to watch that. I've seen that. I'm going to watch that.
I'm following so many different shows going on right now, and some of them are on hiatus, they're in between seasons, and so that's nice, and some are ongoing, and man, it's impossible to keep it all up, especially if I'm trying to do all this other stuff. But I mean, I'd rather have all of this stuff and have this kind of problems than be there's nothing on TV.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Overall, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, where I've been watching anime week by week as it releases in Japan. I think I might prefer that, actually. It allows me to consume more shows at once and get invested in more things.
You get a lot more diversity out of it than just sitting and watching 300 episodes of a series at once.
Yeah.
It prevents fatigue, too.
Yeah, it's easier to digest and you're not intimidated by 300 episodes. That was one of the reasons I kept away from Dragon Ball Z for so long, and then was like, oh, here's Dragon Ball Kai. We cut out a bunch of the crap, and I'm like, yes, this is my time, and now I'm into Dragon Ball.
I like it a whole lot too. Looking at this list, it's not as daunting because I know, hey, if I miss this episode, when I go to watch this, I can watch both of these, or there'll always be something for me to jump on and just watch.
Yeah, sometimes I'll wait a few weeks in between Dragon Ball Super dubs just so I can sit down and watch 2 to 3 episodes. It's just in one sitting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the premiere of My Hero Academia Season 3 because the dub was delayed, and I feel I'm just going to keep watching it dubbed. If they're simuldubbing it, there's no point in me doing that.
Right.
So when it comes to the release of episode 2, I'll actually have 2 episodes to watch. So I was like, yay, more My Hero.
You weren't missing much anyway, so.
Good stuff.
So moving on into the games, before we talk about Monster Hunter, because of course we are, I do want to mention a game I picked up on the eShop, which is, Punch-Out Arcade. They just kind of dropped this on the eShop and didn't really tell anyone. It was just kind of there one day. I remember when it was released on the Japanese eShop, and the only reason I knew that is because Game Explain did a video on it. At least I think they did. Someone did a video on it. It may have been Nintendo. And I was like, okay, I'll wait for this to come out on the American eShop, and I didn't find out until days later. And once again, it was because of Game Explain that I knew it was released. Good job, Nintendo,
I didn't even know it was out at all.
On telling people that your games are on the eShop. So Punch-Out Arcade actually predates Punch-Out on the NES.
I didn't know there was a Punch-Out Arcade game at all. I just thought Punch-Out was the start of
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out came out in 1987 on NES. Punch-Out Arcade released in Japan in 1983, a whole 4 years beforehand.
Wow.
And
Well, dang.
there were 3 more Punch-Out games before we even got to the NES.
Let's get in our Punch-Out Arcade pack with
We
all
had
4 of those.
Punch-Out, well, one of them is actually a Game & Watch game. Punch-Out Boxing is on Game & Watch. Super Punch-Out on Arcade. Hello in the chat. Thanks for joining us. There's actually an arm wrestling arcade game which features a few characters from Punch-Out, but they're arm wrestling instead. And then after that is when we got to Punch-Out on NES. And then every Punch-Out since then, Super Punch-Out, Punch-Out on Wii, and then the WiiWare title, Doc Lewis's Punch-Out. So
Can we get a new
Punch-Out...
Punch-Out game?
So Punch-Out Arcade actually uses 2 screens, 2 different monitors, and they display different information. So one monitor, if you remember the Smash Brothers stage for Punch-Out on Wii U, the screen in the background would sometimes populate with the faces of the characters, the names of them, and then the stats. So that's actually what the arcade screen is showing you in the arcade version of Punch-Out.
That's really cool.
You're funny, Logan. Anyway... completely throwing me off my game. So the Breakdown Podcast is a podcast mostly centered on Nintendo and what's going on in the Nintendoverse, but we also talk about media we consume during the week, such as anime, television, movies, and video games. So this is a weekly show. We live stream on Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on both Twitch, YouTube, and as well as Facebook. You can find us at Break Room Arcade on all of those sources. So the thing about Punch-Out Arcade is it still features Little Mac, and if you remember the wireframe Mac costume in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U,
Wireframe Mac Daddy
is actually from Punch-Out Arcade. Arcade.
Tasty.
So
I want a spin-off called Punch-Out Arcade.
So it basically features the same characters from NES Punch-Out for the most part. But it works a little bit differently. I'm actually struggling right now. I couldn't get past Piston Honda in the second fight. Or I think it was Piston Honda. I can't remember.
as long as you get past Glass Joe, then you got problems. You can't beat Glass Joe.
I got past Glass Joe.
Good.
So I can't remember if this is true in Punch-Out NES or Punch-Out going forward, but you actually have to cover your face and your torso, and you have to switch back and forth. So... in the other Punch-Out games, you could punch, at the body and you could punch at the face. You would just hold up or down to do that. On Arcade, you actually have to switch between the 2 stances to change. And the enemies you face will actually be changing their stance periodically, much like they do in NES. But it seems like a lot more dynamic than you get in NES Punch-Out. Not Piston Honda, Piston Hurricane. He has that attack where he attacks you over and over again, and in the arcade version, he punches you in the face, and then in the stomach, and then in the face. So you have to tap up and down on the arcade stick, or in this case, the joypad, to block each one of his punches. And it just, there's just so much to it at this point that I'm struggling. But I like that it's different than the Punch-Outs I've played because it gives me, something new to try to accomplish. And I've never had a chance to play Punch-Out Arcade in the West. So this is kind of a cool release. I hope they release Super Punch-Out.
I didn't know it existed.
They need to release arm wrestling because I want to try that. I don't even know if it's good, but just, arm wrestling with Punch-Out characters, it just sounds like a good time.
I just love Punch-Out so much. Like, I grew up watching my dad play it, and then I was playing it. And it's one of those franchises that, I don't care which Punch-Out game it is. When it appears on a Nintendo console, I'm buying it.
Oh, yeah.
So when are we getting
Punch-Out 3 times. That's what I'm waiting for. I want it.
Next Level Games. You got to be the one. I love Punch-Out.
Take it to the next level.
Or are we not getting Punch-Out Switch because we already have arms?
Who knows?
Can we get both? They're very
also,
different.
thank you for the follows on Twitch. Thank you so much. And maybe it's time to take a nap if you're getting sleepy. So enough about Punch-Out. You can get that, I believe, for $7.99 on the Switch eShop. I think it's pretty cool. It's the Arcade Archive series, so if you're familiar with all of the little parameters they give you to adjust things, you have all those features there as well. Other than that, it's Spring Festival in Monster Hunter World.
Yeah,
And
it is.
I've played a little bit of that with you, Logan, and as well as our friend Levi.
Yeah.
You know, I love this. Just this event, it feels so much more interactive and alive than it did in previous Monster Hunter games. You know, they're changing the decorations in Astera in the Gathering Hub, and there's special tickets you can get to unlock different types of gear that we didn't have access to before. They're doing a lot more with this.
Yeah, and they just released a special event quest so you can get some new Palico armor. Which is
the Mega Man.
The Mega
one.
Man. Yeah, the Mega Man one. So that's pretty exciting because I know what I'm doing after we get off here.
I miss Monster Hunter. I haven't turned on my copy in a long time, and it's really breaking my heart.
It's breaking my heart too, Paul. Everyone has abandoned Monster Hunter in that Monster Hunter group chat we have on Facebook. It's just me, Logan, and Levi, and the two of them are in there way more than I am. Also, Logan, you're getting hated on right now.
I'm not saying I hate you. All I'm saying is if you got hit by a bus, I'd be driving that bus.
Jeez.
This individual, I don't even know, cut down a Kruzka. You're a pretty divisive character. I'm just gonna, maybe it's the mustache. Maybe if I got rid of the mustache, but I'm not getting rid of the mustache. I'm keeping the mustache for a while because I like myself with this mustache. So if anything,
don't try and
it just
change
reinforced how I feel about myself.
Logan, if he were to try and kill you by hitting you with a bus, I would be the man there to save you from getting hit by the bus.
Oh, you're such a sweetheart.
If he was trying to hit you with the bus and I was there to save you, I just watched.
Man. Paul, jeez.
You're trying to save him. What good is me jumping in there going to do? I'm just going to get in your way, man.
So we
Let him
played
save you.
The Tempered Devil Joe quest, which Levi warned me was very difficult.
Was it?
He was right.
Yeah, we died a lot, and we still haven't beaten it.
Yeah, like the first time we attempted it, we had 2 faints, like as soon as we ran into Devil Joe. Just right off the bat. It was awful.
That sounds
I'm
like
happy
classic
to report that neither of
Devil
them was
Joe.
me. But I was the last faint in that quest, so I don't have any room to talk.
Yeah, and then they announced earlier that specific quest, Relish the Moment, is changing locations from the Ancient Forest to Elder's Recess.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, what?
I wasn't expecting that. They've never done that before.
So I'm kind of curious as to why they made that decision and why are we going to have to hunt in the Elder's Recess now?
There are wider open areas in the Elder's Recess, so I'm wondering if they're trying to kind of temper the difficulty a little bit by giving us some more room.
Right. Yeah, it's much easier to handle Joe when he is in a larger area because you can kind of keep your distance. If you get into some of the small areas in the Ancient Forest, you just don't have a chance. You're running into too many obstacles and walls, and it's a pain in the behind.
So it wasn't disheartening though, because I admit when Devil Joe came out, I was disappointed because he wasn't hard enough, and then they just dropped this Tempered Devil Joe quest on us, and they pretty much fixed it. They killed us a lot, and I appreciate that because being a Monster Hunter veteran. This game was not terribly difficult to get through, so it's nice that they're starting to introduce like those super, super difficult quests. I hope we get a little bit more of those. I'm happy with just the one right now because we haven't beaten it yet.
Yeah, I feel like that's my next goal. I feel like I'm more motivated to go back and revisit it because I'm struggling so much.
It's going to make that victory so much sweeter when we finally
Exactly. So like obviously for people who have been playing the last few entries and are relatively familiar, or at the very least kind of have a basic understanding of the game, it's interesting to go in there and all of a sudden you're like, I need to get better, because like the game is not gonna let up. So
we're kind of getting to that point where your defense on your set doesn't really make a difference anymore. You just need to be good at the game,
right?
Make smart moves, good decisions. So that's been exciting in Monster Hunter. I'm excited to play more of the Spring Festival and hopefully get some of those exclusive items before time runs out. That goes until the 19th for those of you who are playing Monster Hunter and maybe haven't played for a while. So get on there, get your Spring Blossom tickets. They are available as daily limited bounties to get those. So get on there, get your tickets. Logan, you've played another game this week. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I went ahead and so I'll tell you how this happened, right? I was up late at night and I had left all of my physical games in my roommate's room. And he was asleep and I wasn't going to go bother him. But I didn't want to play any of the games that were downloaded or the one cartridge that was in my Switch. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to buy a new game. And so I bought Blossom Tales because so many people recommended it. They're like, oh my God, if you're looking for a Link to the Past style game, Blossom Tales is great. And to be honest, at this point, I'm kind of meh about it.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah. So at this point, like, I think the comparison to A Link to the Past was too often stated, because while it does have a lot of that, the actual like flow of the game is very much different. The game tends to be a lot more action oriented, much less puzzle oriented, at least from the experience I've had. I have yet to finish the game, so that might change as I experience it.
Well,
but it's more like,
A Link to the Past,
every time I go into it, it's just like, okay, here's a series of obstacles. Here's a series of obstacles. Don't die. Instead of, okay, here's a bunch of puzzles you got to figure out. And I'm a big puzzle guy. I really like puzzles. So when you tell me it's A Link to the Past, and I've not beaten A Link to the Past, but I've played a good amount of it, and I really like Zelda dungeon puzzle solving. And so I kind of went in with that expectation, and I haven't gotten that. And so I can kind of appreciate it for what it is, but I'm not too keen on it yet. But again, maybe once I finish it, I will feel differently about it. But people like gushed over this game, and I'm really mad about it. And I think that doesn't happen often. A lot of the times when like
I think I completely disagree with you.
I was actually just about to say, the way you're like talking about this actually made me more interested in playing it than less interested.
And that might be true. I don't think people really talked about how it was different, or at least I didn't hear people talk about how.
I personally don't think it is that different. It hasn't been long since I've played A Link to the Past, and I've never particularly thought that the puzzles in that game were all that convoluted. And it's kind of the same in Blossom Tales. Well, I mean, the style of puzzle you come across in Blossom Tales, it doesn't seem or feel all that different to me than what you'd get out of A Link to the Past. The puzzle solving in Legend of Zelda, specifically in top-down games, has evolved an incredible amount since A Link to the Past has come out.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just pushing blocks or killing all the enemies in the room or finding the switch hidden under a stone. And that's kind of what A Link to the Past was. There is some stuff that's more complicated.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. It's not resonating with me yet. Again,
I'd say that's fair.
I gotta give it more time and really experience the full experience to really gather my thoughts on it. So maybe in a future episode I'll talk about it.
What I wanted from this game, and I haven't bought it yet, I haven't played it yet. But I want something that's inspired by A Link to the Past, but isn't A Link to the Past verbatim.
Right. It's very much its own thing. It tends to be, again, when I say it feels a lot more action oriented, it feels a lot more floaty and flowy. And I think that's one of its strengths. It feels really, really good to play. So, I mean, if there is anything I can say about it right now that I can really praise it about it, it's just, it feels good. The way your character moves around, swinging a sword, it almost feels like a little bit of a dance, like you're ice skating.
It kind of harkens the updates that you see in A Link Between Worlds. That game is not nearly as like floaty or flowy as Blossom Tales, but it is a lot more than you would find in A Link to the Past.
Right.
And doesn't it also adapt the kind of stamina meter solution to like bombs and arrows?
Yeah. No, and I thought that was good. Because you really just have to manage yourself. You can't just like throw out bomb after bomb after bomb, but you're also never going to run out of bombs. It's just going to be like, oh, well, you don't have any bombs now, and that, or enough stamina magic meter to use a specific item that you want to use in that moment. So you just have to worry about managing that.
Have you made it into a dungeon yet?
Yeah, I made it past the first one, and I'm currently in the second one.
Because one thing that like really struck a chord with me, or felt very much a Link to the Past, is the boss battles are like verbatim Link to the Past. Like that is a boss battle from a Zelda game.
Oh, okay. That's another thing. The first boss battle, I really enjoyed the boss battle. It was a well crafted battle. Like you had to think about, okay, what am I supposed to do? And generally, you know, with Zelda games, you have to like, okay, somehow you have to incorporate the item that you just got, right? And so the first one is bombs, and you have to like, so I'm thinking like, how do I use bombs? You know, how are bombs the key to this puzzle here? So the first boss was good.
There's also like a nice visual cue when you're fighting bosses that I really appreciate. Obviously, they don't have a health meter. You can't see what their health is. But when you strike the boss and you deal damage, the screen will flash either green, yellow, or red to tell you how much life the boss has left.
That's a nice touch.
It's also an indicator that you're actually dealing damage, which is often a problem in Zelda games. Like, you don't know if you're actually doing damage. Maybe you're getting to the point where you can deal damage to a boss, but you're not actually doing it yet. So for me, that was a nice plus. But I'm curious to see what you think going to the end. I'm through. I think I'm in dungeon number 3 right now.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have to go back to it and see if my opinion changes.
Right.
Find out when we get there. Paul, you have played a couple games this week.
Yeah.
What do you got?
So first up, I finally finished Rise of the Tomb Raider. And it's a good game.
Wow, so you're through the first 2 then?
Yep.
And you're set up for the third one?
Glad you liked it.
I had to fly through these games because I watched my dad playing the original, like the first 3 as a kid, and those were, you know, very formative experiences for me. One of the things that got me into gaming. It's one of the few games I've ever seen my dad sit down and play. You know, apparently he was very into video games, and my mom made him stop.
Why?
I don't know. It makes me so sad. But you know, it's fun being able to sit down and play these games, see how they've evolved, and they've just, even from like it was just Tomb Raider. From that game to this, like seeing how it's just progressed and gotten so much better is so refreshing. And it actually, without getting too deep into it, this game did something from the first game that I really, really liked. And it was giving you very strong opponents towards the end of the game. You're faced up against something very different than what you are normally pitted against in the beginning of that game.
I think really I know what you're talking about.
I hope you do.
Yeah. Was it a particular battle sequence that you're referring to?
Well, battle sequences.
It does amp up, yeah.
Yeah. They add in things that aren't easy to kill.
That's always fun. I like not breezing through a game.
Yeah. Even playing it, I think I was playing it on like one of the easier settings just to kind of get through it. But there was still a lot of points where like I had to be conscious of what I was doing in battle, because I could easily have just gotten completely decimated.
I was playing on hard when I started, and there was a particular battle section that I just couldn't get through. Like, I died.
That
just
bear
over and
messed
over
you
again.
up, didn't it?
Well, it wasn't the bear. It was somewhere in the middle of the game, and I died
Gotcha.
over and over again for like half an hour, and ultimately I just brought the difficulty down. I was like, nope, I'm done. We're done with this. I'm moving on.
Not gonna let this difficulty destroy my experience.
It's Tomb Raider. It manages to like it has challenge. You need strategy. You can't just like breeze through it.
It's a survival game
Yeah,
at its core.
it's very different than one of the other games I've played this week. And we'll get more into Uncharted after this, but I did enjoy the story of these games somehow. I know that wasn't your particular like selling point, Brandon, but
Oh yeah, I didn't care for the story of the first game even the slightest bit. The second one I enjoyed a little bit more because we're getting more into Lara's past, and that's what I care about more. And I anticipate we'll get even more into that with a third game, because the game does leave off on a cliffhanger. If you watched all the way through the credits, there was one more scene.
I think I did. I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, actually, Paul, a question or kind of just a comment towards you. You know, obviously now you've finished those games, and then you've expressed interest.
I pre-ordered
Interest for those who are listening to audio version. I'm making air quotes. And with the Uncharted games, and one of the comparisons I hear about the new Tomb Raider games is the Uncharted games. So I will be interested. I mean, I guess Brandon, you've played through.
I played through both of them.
I can see it already. I don't know from the first game how it will compare later on with the later game.
The combat scenarios specifically seem to be maybe lifted from Uncharted, obviously with their own twist and refined in a way for Tomb Raider. But that in particular is very similar, and obviously just like the dungeon crawling or the tomb crawling, that atmosphere obviously is very similar too. But I don't think it extends too far beyond that.
Yeah, I look forward to giving you more thoughts on that as further into the Uncharted games.
Okay, good. Because I'd love to hear your opinion.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed how that game did. They kind of do some different things in the gameplay and whatnot. That Tomb Raider games are fun.
Yeah, and they're really
tried
well
them. Try them.
Not a lot of bugs. They run well.
They look good.
They look very good.
They look good.
I remember when they showed off the first game and they just focused like in like an unnecessary amount of time on like the hair physics.
They are impressive though.
Yeah, I know. That's what I remember from when they revealed the first game. So
our hair do look good though.
Any other comments?
That's Tomb Raider. No.
So you also played Uncharted.
I played Uncharted. Kill me, please.
You're playing the first one?
Yep. I look forward very much to getting to 2 and onward. But I asked Brandon in the first 15 minutes if I could stop playing and just read the summary and start 2. He's like, you should really play the first one.
You should really just have that experience in your belt. The events
I've
of the game.
played bad games, man.
The events of the game are not necessarily imperative to the rest of the series, but there is some emotional payoff that playing all of the games will add to, that I highly encourage that you play all of them.
Also, it makes you appreciate the second game so much more.
Oh my god, yes.
Everything.
It's such a stark contrast.
It's very, very stark. I mean, they really up the kind of the feeling of the locomotion.
I would genuinely hope they would have.
Yeah.
One thing I might not suggest you get excited about is the combat, because that pretty much never changes, except for 4. It is very refined in 4.
Well, they add some interesting like they expand upon it through like 3, right? And then 3 is where it gets a little more interesting, and then they kind of polish it up for 4, but then 4 pulls in all the best parts.
The enemies stop being just flat out bullet sponges after game 1, because you could shoot them for an eternity and some of them won't die.
That's one of the things that bug me. There's 2 things that are just killing me. And I mean killing me literally. I keep dying, and that's part of the reason why I'm not enjoying the game. But the
just play it on easy.
I am, but I'm like in the climbing segments and whatnot. I keep experiencing like Assassin's Creed. I played through the original Assassin's Creed.
The game does not
you're trying to go here.
Yeah,
you're trying to go here. You end up in the ocean dead.
There is an incredible feature that they add. It may have been in 3, or it may have started in 4, but eventually in the games, when you're pressing on the analog stick, Drake will reach his hand out in the direction you're controlling so that you're going to make the jump first.
Yeah. It's a really nice tell. Like, this is going to functionally.
Well, I would hope they wouldn't make that worse, because there's nothing more frustrating than I'm trying to jump here and then dying. Especially like last night, towards the end of my gameplay, there was one segment that like it just kept going and going, and I kept ending up in the ocean. I had to start the whole thing over again. Ugh. And it was particularly just one little segment of it that like I kept missing. And so I had to go through that like 4 or 5 times before I finally got through it. And I was so upset by the time I got done with it.
It's not fun when you're like fighting the game in that way.
If I legitimately died, for something I did, I can accept that. When the game is just functioning poorly, that's upsetting. That's just purely upsetting. But the other thing was with the combat, just the enemies being bullet sponges. They just keep not dying. And like when you have a limited amount of ammo, like that ammo capacity wouldn't be an issue if you could actually kill the enemies.
I don't remember ammo capacity being so much of an issue for me, but
I'm a terrible shot. And the enemies don't die.
That game doesn't have auto assist.
Was there aim assist in the first game?
No. They added
Is that a thing in second?
Yeah, I played all those games with aim assist. I was like, I'm just not that patient, or I'm in it for the I'm in it for the story. I'm in it for an interesting and fun experience. I'm not gonna let the game fight me on that.
They really expand the personalities of the characters going into the second game. Nathan Drake in particular just becomes an absolute joy of a person.
I mean, I like the story. I like the characters. I just wish that the gameplay
surrounding it
was as good.
And that's like all the praises that were sung for this game when it came out. It's like the visuals, the technical achievement that the game was, because it was a big deal when it came out. But the game around it, I can't imagine being there in the time that it came out, because I don't think I would have liked this game.
There are very few times when I've been playing it that I was like, oh yeah, I died here and that was my bad. It was a lot of time like, why am I dead? What the heck, man? What is going on? And I mean, you could say it's hard. I say it's bad. I don't think that's hard. It's just not balanced correctly.
I think I'm inclined to agree. My experience with Uncharted 1 is pretty much mirroring yours. It was an incredibly frustrating experience from start to finish. Then I got to 2 and it blew my mind.
Yeah, 1's just super, super clunky. And then I think after 1, they were like, okay, we want to continue this.
But maybe we should make it good this time.
Well,
people will play it if you make it good.
They were able to say like, okay, here's all the things we need to fix. Here's where we need to invest our time in to make sure that. Right. Yeah, very much so. The second game and the third game and the fourth game could not have existed without the clunky mess that is the first game.
It's very rare that I have to stop and consider not completing a game. I played through Kingdom Hearts, and no offense to Kingdom Hearts fans, like I understand nostalgia and how powerful it is, but Kingdom Hearts, if you go and play 2 and then immediately go back and play 1 is not a good game. Like it doesn't hold a candlestick to 2. That's the problem with a lot of games. Like when they continually make improvements, it's hard to go back and enjoy those games. But I played through 1. I played all. I forgot how long it took me. Probably 30 hours.
It's like playing Brawl and then going back to Melee. You just don't want to play Melee anymore. You
Get
know?
the heck out of here, Logan.
Oh man, just like so many triggered. People.
But I mean, I managed to play through Assassin's Creed and I actually enjoyed the original Assassin's Creed because I didn't have any experience with like any of the following games. My mistake with Kingdom Hearts is I tried out 2 to make sure it worked. And so the first game controls differently and it upset me. And I think a lot of the menu to like use items and whatnot is just poorly designed. So that's more of my complaints with it, but it was playable.
I also have a personal bias against just like the menu-based fighting system in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
That's just me. You can hate me for that. I'm sorry. It's just not my cup of tea. But I look forward to you finishing Uncharted 1.
I'm sorry, Gary. The guy who recommended that on my block is here. Welcome. We had this discussion earlier. I was upsetting him by saying I didn't like Kingdom Hearts.
Well, you might not like me very much. I don't hate Kingdom Hearts. I can't stand that first game.
It's hard to play, like I said, especially if you play like the second one and then go back. Like, yeah, they really figured out what they were doing in terms of control for the second game. But yeah, the point being though, is I played some bad games, and I can't stand Uncharted. I strongly considered just not for the first time in my life.
I think the upside to those games is that
they get better.
Only doing a complete playthrough is only a handful of hours. Like if you just trudge through it, you could get through that in like a few nights. You know, it's not like you're going to be slaving away for 20, 30, 40 hours.
Well, that's what I did. You know,
Thank you, Gary, for respecting our opinions.
I beat the entire Uncharted series in 1 week at a pace of like one game every 2 nights or so. Mm-hmm. Uncharted 3 I beat in 1 day because I just sat down and I was so into it. I was like, I can't wait to see what happens next. I'm going to get to the end. And I was also really excited for Uncharted 4. That was the end.
I think, man, I wasn't a huge fan of... I thought the pacing for Uncharted 3 was not as strong as 2.
I see a lot of people say that. I'd probably have a warped opinion because I beat it in 1 day. So I didn't really recognize that as a problem.
Right.
But looking back, I think I can see the areas where people might think that.
Yeah.
I think my problem these days is that I do prefer shorter games. So that's part of the reason why I'm chugging through it. Because I know I'll have a couple other short games that are easy to digest, easy to get through. Like that's part of the reason I didn't go back to Monster Hunter World. Is because I've already spent, 100 hours in it. I have another backlog of all these really short games that I want to experience that I just keep putting off to play these bigger games, and I need to get through them.
I just keep going back to all these evergreen titles. Like I keep going back to Monster Hunter World, Splatoon 2, Binding of Isaac Rebirth.
When Smash comes out, that's all I'll be doing for a long time.
Yeah.
I gotta get this stuff out of the way before Smash Brothers because I know my life is over at that point.
Well, you do have a game coming up here shortly, and you pre-ordered it.
Oh yeah. Well, I've pre-ordered a couple games this week. I forgot to add. I pre-ordered the new Tomb Raider game this week. I forgot to add that to my list, but I also pre-ordered God of War. And
that's
boy, am I excited to try that out.
Quite literally a week away.
That's next Friday, yeah.
I climbed aboard that hype train really late in the game, but
yeah, reviews started coming in. Everybody started talking about this is a masterpiece. Everybody should play this, and I was like, God darn it! Like I was thinking about it, but
I've been a very happy gamer ever since I got my PlayStation 4, because I have all these Nintendo titles I play, and then and periodically I get just like this really big Sony exclusive game that's story driven and single player, and it's so good.
Oh yeah,
I have like the perfect balance of releases now between PC, PS4, and Nintendo Switch.
I have too much. Too much.
It can get
I
overwhelming.
invested like half the time I spend in like Splatoon 2 or Binding of Isaac. I probably could have finished like 20 or 30 games with that time.
Well, that's why I'm taking a step away from titles like Splatoon 2 and like Monster Hunter. So I have
love
the time
them
to get
so
through
much.
I do too. It's hard,
enjoy,
but-
and that's the thing is like I play games that I enjoy. If I'm not enjoying myself, it's really hard to keep playing the game. Some of these smaller titles, like they have lulls or something like that, or I don't know, and maybe I feel like it's the same thing over and over again, and I lose interest, and that's a really bad habit because there's a lot of good games that I'm really missing out on, like the full experience.
I'm trying to diversify my experience. That's why I'm trying to play a bunch of smaller games and just see what they're about.
And then eventually you'll play Horizon Zero Dawn, and you'll learn why it's one of the best games of last year.
Yeah,
man. I gotta get through Uncharted. I gotta get through Shadow of the Colossus, and then I think that's the third PlayStation 4 title that I'm going to try and beat.
Well, that's like 5 games in a row then between Uncharted and Shadow of the Colossus that are just like short, digestible games.
Yeah.
So
And
that'll
then
be
I'll
a
go
nice
through a
break.
slightly longer one, but not Persona 5 long. I'll be happy.
yeah. I think they said God of War's like average playthroughs maybe like 35 hours.
Oh, yeah, I just remembered that was also going to go probably before Horizon Zero Dawn.
Well, now you're going to play one of the best games of this year and then compare it to one of the best games of last year.
Yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn may be one of my favorite games of all time.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
Wow.
you're selling it.
I had an incredible experience with that game, and I don't know, it did things to me.
Yeah, I think
Made you feel some type of way.
I think Horizon came out in the wrong context because that game was released the same day as Breath of the Wild, and that's
It
just
came out before Breath of the
Why
Wild by
would
like a week, right?
yeah. But why would you do that to yourself? Like, why would
It's
you do
kind
that?
of sad because
mean,
it's an
you could
incredible game.
You could very
Right.
easily get 2 different audiences for both of those games.
Right, and
But
it's
they're
not that it
both open
didn't do
world
well.
and combat oriented.
Yeah.
They were a
Right,
little too
and-
close.
Right, and that's why I'm like, just give it some space, give it some time to breathe, because you don't want those comparisons. Because while they do have a lot of similarities, they're different games, and they should be treated as such.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think that wraps up the breakdown segment of the show. And now we're going to get into the main topic. So, Nintendo, they swept some awards at the, the BAFTA Awards. They took home some awards for Breath of the Wild and Super Mario
Of course
Odyssey.
they did.
And the man who was accepting the awards let it slip that Nintendo's R&D was researching and developing, that's what they do there, a brand new piece of hardware, and that you might see it soon, is what he said.
Yeah, this is like the least surprising piece of news I've ever heard.
Well, this is always how it works. Nintendo starts development on their next console as soon as that console that they're working on is out. So
Yep.
Switch released, on to the next system. The thing, though, the thing that surprised me, and the reason I want to bring this up, is that I am so incredibly happy with Nintendo Switch that I'm not sure I want to deviate from that too much. So what is this piece of hardware? Is this a Switch revision? Is this the next generation? What is it?
Maybe it's a combination of both, because maybe they're exploring ways to expand the Switch and improve upon the Switch. I mean, you look at the 3DS, and they had the new 3DS, and it had a better processor in it and added a few new features. So I could see them doing the same thing with the Switch. And then you look at what's happening with Xbox One and the PS4, how they have like hardware revisions that make it 4K capable, make it so you can have beefier graphics, have more on the screen, whatever. And so I anticipate and I would hope that, one of these things that they're researching and developing is a Switch revision. Not so much a Switch 2, but as a 2.0, a version 2.0, where the games are going to look that much prettier. They're going to have larger cartridges, and it's just going to be more capable on the go.
What you want is a new Nintendo Switch XL.
Kind of, but I don't feel like it needs to be any bigger than it is. No, please.
I'd kind of like to see them go in a similar direction to that, but kind of play around with one of those early patents that they had where rather than like, here's a new Switch, here's Switch 2.0, you keep adding to it, and there's supplemental hardware that kind of beefs up the specs. So that you don't have to go out and buy a new Switch. You don't have to go out and buy like the main console. You don't have to get necessarily a whole new dock, but you just kind of keep adding to it, and you can choose to add this little contraption to your dock, and you'll get better graphics at home.
It's like the RAM expansion that they released on the Nintendo 64.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think in terms of, if I'm just throwing out some names there, right? And we've talked about this before. We've come up with some interesting names for what a Switch revision would be called. If it's not called the Nintendo Switch Xbox One X, I'm going to argue that it should be called the Nintendo Switch D4, because that's like the best thing ever, and everyone would jump on that.
I'd be all over that.
That'd be so cool.
I wouldn't be surprised if they go Super Switch.
Or actually, Super
I'd
Nintendo
be forward
Switch.
with that.
Yeah.
Just like that. That would be pretty cool. And then the new Super Nintendo Switch. And then the new Super Nintendo Switch Bros.
You. Switch you.
It never ends. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
Hit us.
So at E3 this year, Nintendo announces the Nintendo 4DS. What do you do?
What?
The Nintendo 4DS.
What are we smelling now?
If it is anything below like a life-changing experience, like, people talk about like taking psychedelics and just their life being completely different. If the 4DS does not do that, then I don't care. Because
you're just talking a new portable,
the next generation of handheld gaming for Nintendo. That is not the Switch.
Yeah,
I guess for me it depends on what it is.
Fourth dimension, I'll be disappointed.
Like, to a degree, it'd be cool to go back to having like that 2-screen foldable, slightly smaller portable experience. At the same time, it's really hard to like. The Switch is perfect.
It is.
You can have the same game at home on the go. You just whoop, and then you leave, and you just keep going with it. It's really hard to kind of beat that experience in those types of games because you can get both experiences in one unit. You don't need that second console. And it'd be cool. They have to do something really compelling with it.
And also, who do they aim this towards? If they were to do it, I would assume that this would be marketed towards children. And if they were to do that, what kinds of games would we expect on it? Would they be something that would appeal to us anyway? I want to avoid a situation where Nintendo is dividing development up between two different platforms again. We saw what that was like during the Wii U generation, and it was awful. Like, the biggest and best releases for that entire generation were primarily on Nintendo 3DS, I would argue. And Wii U support was just waning, and obviously wasn't doing that well.
Wii U support ended up going, like, most of the Wii U games ended up going to the 3DS because it's just a more compelling system.
Yeah,
I don't want to live in that world ever again.
Yeah, I say we stay with the Switch. I think if Nintendo wants to do something that's primarily portable, something that's not hooked up to an extra screen, it needs to be something different. Something actually that's been on my mind the last few days is I've been looking at some of these standalone like VR headsets, and how that will kind of like push VR into the mainstream because they're so much cheaper. Like the Oculus Go is like half the price of the main Oculus, and then I know that We've got the Vive version of the Oculus Go, and that's coming soon as well. And usually they just come with like a singular controller, and it's not like mind-blowing experiences like with the Vive. I guess, there's not a ton of mind-blowing experiences. This VR as is, but you don't get the whole room scale experience with it. But you do get a controller that has, motion and a few buttons and stuff like that.
Are you suggesting we get a watered-down experience on a second console?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that we get a radically different experience as opposed to like, okay, we got the Switch. So if you want to play your home console games or you want to play them portably, you got the Switch. What other kind of experience can the Switch not give us that might work just in a portable sense? And so the closest thing I can think of is, something like VR and AR. Is Nintendo going to make a primarily mobile experience based on like augmented reality, and a system that's dedicated to that kind of thing and interacting, having social interactions,
that would
with this
definitely
kind of
have to be
device.
like a more compelling experience than what you could get on your smartphone, because we already
Right.
have Nintendo smartphone apps and games.
Yeah.
So if they don't make it compelling, or if they don't make the hardware something that you can only get on that piece of hardware, then I don't see the point in making another portable.
At this point,
Right.
I'd say between smartphones and the Switch, that they should just kind of avoid doing a dedicated portable console.
Maybe
Point.
Nintendo should just get into the smartphone market, and make kind of like fuse some of those ideas that they had with the 3DS into their smartphone, and then have just a product that's more compelling.
They have a
than just,
patent
like-
for an old phone that played Nintendo games on it.
Right. So I mean that'd be really cool. And maybe again it factors in some of that cool augmented reality stuff, and
Yeah.
maybe it's made to also go into a visor for VR, and just
That'd
kinda
be
have
the
whole
thing that
package.
like I would like to see Nintendo do with like future hardware is try out VR. If anyone's going to give us like the definitive VR experience, make the statement, this is what VR can be.
We
Give
know that they're
Nintendo-
interested.
Yeah, give Nintendo a Vive and some of Vive's like new Knuckles controllers and see what they can do with it.
We
because
know
I'd like
that they're
to see
experimenting with VR right now. I believe Nintendo's in a place where they don't believe VR can stand alone. So
No.
what I imagine they're doing is that they're hard at work with their own innovation to make VR an experience that's really worth diving into.
Leave it to Nintendo to come up with some kind of accessory that can fix like the motion problems of VR.
I
If
fully
anyone can,
anticipate
it's
that.
Nintendo. Yeah.
If they're getting into the VR market, they're not entering without that compelling piece of technology. That's the kind of company they are. That's another thing I kind of question about this whole thing. The interesting thing about Nintendo Switch is we are targeting a more core audience again with the way we interact with our games. We're also targeting a casual audience by having access to all kinds of like eShop and smaller budget titles. But the main thing that was innovative about the Switch is that it was both a console and a handheld. We don't have a tablet gaming screen like the Wii U. It's not motion controls. We know in the age of Satoru Iwata that he was all about innovation with your systems. You have to not just do the same thing over and over again. The hybrid console system is so revolutionary, and it has mass market appeal. Nintendo has to do that
Nintendo
again.
Revolution.
Exactly. So does Nintendo do that again with this next system? Are we out of that age of Iwata? What do we expect? Is this just going to be a beefed up Switch? Maybe like a Nintendo 64 to the GameCube kind of deal? Where do we go?
I don't know. I hope Nintendo has kind of both sides of it, where they realize that if we're going to have a successful product, it needs to innovate if we're going to remain relevant. And that's what they've done with the Switch. But then they also have to consider marketability, because you don't want to release a product that's so revolutionary, but then nobody wants it. right?
Well, I feel like they found a good solution to that with Nintendo Labo. Here is the Nintendo Switch, which has these tertiary features that aren't being focused on a lot, and now we're going to release the secondary product as its own market that works in tandem with Nintendo Switch and is innovative in its own right.
Right.
So is that the approach we take going forward?
I think the approach really depends on what this next hardware is going to be.
Yeah.
If it is a whole new console, then I think the ideals they had of being the innovator needs to ring true here. That they need to do something different, or I mean, they can going from like the DS line to the 3DS. They managed to keep essentially the same like format of the hardware, and still managed to make it innovative and new and fresh. And so I'd like to see them kind of keep that hybrid style to it, but just find something else they can add to it that makes it unique or stand alone. If we're getting revisions, just beef it up, please.
The most incredible thing about Nintendo Switch with its innovation is the fact that Nintendo addressed a real problem. With Nintendo Wii, it was like, here's a brand new way to play that you didn't think about before. It wasn't a solution to a pre-existing problem. With Nintendo Switch, you had people in their older age, and they're growing up. They work full-time jobs like us. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of time to game. Nintendo Switch is the perfect solution to that, and it's serving as a solution for a lot of people. I hear this over and over again that people are getting back into gaming because Nintendo Switch is allowing that. Can Nintendo pull that kind of answer out again with their next hardware or their next piece of hardware? What is a problem we have in the gaming world right now that Nintendo could be the answer to? That's why they're so successful right now.
VR. I want them to be the solution to that problem.
VR is a problem right now, at least for the people who are adapting to it. That's a problem in its own right. It's not very accessible.
You're right. I mean, it's still expensive, so it's still a long way off from being completely mainstream, and that's why we have some of these lower echelon of products that's coming out that aren't going to be quite the experience that you get with room scale. But at the very same time, room scale still has its limitations. So if you strip a few of those back, there's still plenty of experiences you can have within VR. And obviously the most creative games and the best games in VR are ones that play to those limitations. The ones that recognize these are the things that you can do with the current iteration of these technologies, and we play to those strengths, and then those end up being the really, really compelling experiences, even though none of them have really reached the level of acclaim that more traditional gaming with a controller has. And that's kind of, I guess that's what we're waiting for with VR, is we're waiting for where's the Legend of Zelda, where's the the Super Mario Odyssey, where everybody's like, this makes sense to us now, instead of it being like...
It's that kind of thing that dissuades me from thinking Nintendo's main piece of innovation for the next system would be VR. I think VR has to be a tertiary feature. Because when you think about it, when Nintendo releases a new piece of hardware that focuses on an innovation, the majority of their games are directly utilizing it and making that feature very compelling and a reason that you want to play the game like that. We failed with that with Nintendo Wii U, and that whole console was a disaster. 3DS was a little bit easier because 3D was just something you could flip on, and it would add a little bit of depth that wasn't necessary to the experience. But if they were to do VR, then I would imagine Nintendo would be in that mindset that all of their games have to be a VR experience. How do we make this work? And if they can't, then they're going to drop dead again.
Yeah, and now there's some games that I'm like, why would you ever want to translate this to VR? Because
we had that problem with motion controls, right?
Right. Yeah. So obviously I wouldn't want to play Breath of the Wild in VR. If it was like a display kind of thing, like I got to look at the display and it was in 3D in VR, then that's cool. I'd love for that to be an option. But when I'm looking at VR, I'm looking at, okay, well, is there something that's playing to the strengths of the technology? And honestly, I don't think that gaming is going to be the core thing that comes out of VR and AR. And mixed reality and stuff like that. I think it'll be different types of social interactions and different editing software that's gonna, yeah, that kind of thing. And that's really why I'm excited about VR is how it could change how the way we live. Games is like, okay, this is just changing how we play games, where VR is going to quite literally change the way we live. And I think it'll make, if done right, it could make a lot of people's lives a lot easier and a lot better.
Oh, totally agree. One more aspect of Nintendo's next piece of hardware, something that they talked about with Nintendo Switch during the January event where they first revealed it, that really spoke to me, was they went down the line with Nintendo hardware and talked about each individual innovation they made with each piece of hardware, and how that has become a mainstay for their entire lineup of consoles. You looked at the NES, and that introduced the D-pad. The SNES introduced shoulder buttons and four-face buttons. The N64 brought us into the world of 3D gaming, as well as adding an analog stick. GameCube
brought us the best controller on the planet.
Pretty much. Then Wii, obviously, with motion controls and so on and so on. But all of those features have found their way into Nintendo Switch. And now Nintendo Switch's main feature is being a hybrid console. So do we make a brand new innovation with the next system where the hybrid switching power of the console is just an additional feature, like all of those other features that are still there? Is that how we move forward? Because I think that's how we move forward.
I really hope so.
I mean, I really liked that. I like the idea that, with my Switch, that I still have the option to do motion controls. And, we're going to be getting a TV for the front room. And my younger brother has a copy of Just Dance 2017 for the Switch. And all I could think of, oh my gosh, I can play Just Dance, right? And it's not one of those experiences, obviously, that it's like, oh, Breath of the Wild, but Just Dance is a lot of fun. And if you're playing with a bunch of people and you're just, being goofs in the front room, it's a great time. So I like that it's still an option. We still have the option for motion controls and even pointer controls for certain games. I like the fact that we have a touch screen. So if there's a game that's primarily a touch screen, a mobile port or something like that, then I can just sit there and do that as well. And now we have this whole hybrid, I could put it on the TV, or I could just sit on the toilet and play video games. Come on, who didn't sit on their Game Boy for an hour in the bathroom, and your parents are wondering what kind of heinous activity are they doing in the bathroom right now for a whole hour? And it turns out they finished taking a dump 45 minutes ago, but they're playing The Hobbit on their Game Boy Advance SP. True story.
I feel like the Switch is a better solution than the Wii U was to the problem that they were trying to address. If someone else wants to use the TV, you pick up the console and you go wherever you want. There's a lot of time where I just didn't have space to even set up the dock, so I played most of my games on the Switch handheld, and I had a perfectly enjoyable experience, just as much so as having it docked and playing on the TV. But I had that freedom to go anywhere else in the house and continue playing, where, with the Wii U, if someone was playing it on the TV, I was stuck to being, a certain radius around that. And even with that, if I didn't have space for the dock for the Switch, I'm not going to have space for the Wii U and the gamepad. It's just so good.
So, a piece of news that came out right before we started the show, that kind of directly plays into today's topic. It was kind of a miracle that it happened this way.
Hey!
Nintendo has filed for a new patent. And rather than trying to explain it to you in my layman's terms, I'm just going to read the article off of Nintendo Everything. So, yesterday, a new Nintendo patent was made available for public viewing. The company is protecting an idea for a game system with a plurality of information processing apparatuses that are capable of communicating with each other. The diagrams that they have here are multiple screens that are arranged in multiple ways. There's not a definite way that they're arranged. They're like two 16:9 screens. In this first shot, they have them perpendicular to one another, and they have an image of a finger sliding from one screen to the other, and the interactable on that screen is moving from one screen to the other. So the first thing that comes to mind when looking at this is two Nintendo Switches sitting next to each other and interacting in this way. So is this just a feature we're getting on the system? Game. It could be a party game. Well, this has plenty of applications. I can imagine you playing like a puzzle game where you're trying to get a marble like through a maze, but you can only see certain aspects of the maze based on the way that you have the screens oriented to one another. So maybe your second player is moving their screen to another area, so you can see a different part of the maze that maybe has an interactable that you can play with, like a switch that you have to flip that you couldn't see otherwise. So there's some interesting gameplay applications that come from this. That
the thing that I see with this that I immediately like is it feels like a way, look, if these were Switches, everybody brings their Switch, and it adds a level of depth because it's how our Switches are interacting with each other, rather than we're all sitting here and we have our own screen, we're seeing what we're doing. It doesn't matter what they're doing, but we're playing the same game together. This is our Switches are interacting with each other. And it's an experience that you could get, or you couldn't get, if I'm here and you're, somewhere else. This is something we have to be in the same space in order to get this experience.
Yeah, there's even an image here that it's very reminiscent of The Legend of Zelda. It's a top-down experience where, the character is moving, in all four cardinal directions, and they got the finger on the character, and they're sliding them over to the next screen. And the first thing that comes to mind is the original Legend of Zelda on NES, which was literally just screens, like, stitched together that you would walk between. So I can see them crafting some really unique gameplay experiences using this.
Oh,
and
definitely.
Assuming that it goes up to 8 Switches connected to one another, I can't honestly, I can't imagine what else they could do with this. And obviously, this is probably going to be like a singular feature, maybe just in a couple games that come out. I don't see this being like a primary feature to sell a new system with.
But guys, we're missing the very obvious application of this. We could emulate, or we could get DS games into Virtual Console for Switch with this.
You lay two Switches next to each other.
Function of this.
Yeah, just get a bunch of duct tape and tape the two Switches together.
$300 to get a second Switch, so that I could have them act as like a 2DS. I honestly would.
They have an image here where one of the screens is flipped up, like the way you would see on a Nintendo DS. It's actually kind of neat. It's a bowling game. The bowling ball is on the part that's raised, and the pins are at the bottom, and you kind of flick the ball to the end.
Guys, wait! I know what this has to. This is Nintendo Labo. This is a future Nintendo Labo application. I mean, you see the fold and stuff up. They're going to be in like some sort of configuration. Obviously, I see so many people oh, here is mine and my husband's and all my kids' Switches. So they have 5 or 6 Switches lined up, Everybody in the house has their own.
Actually, I think we're going on the wrong path with this. You want to know what it is?
Oh, no. What is it
patent
called?
For the Nintendo DS stage for Smash Brothers. Nintendo DS stage for Smash.
I definitely see the application for Labo here. And I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being what it is. And also, being a Nintendo patent, there's also the possibility that nothing ever comes of this.
I mean, they patent tons of stuff that okay, well, if we find a use for this,
They went farther with the vitality sensor, though. They showed us it at E3. And then nothing ever happened. So I don't foresee this being its own game system for a future concept. I see this being applied to the Switch. I mean, it's pretty obvious just looking at it. But then again, maybe nothing will come of it. So
only time will tell.
I anticipate that we won't get another home console from Nintendo that's brand new for at least, that 5-6 year cycle, because they're riding a high right now with Nintendo Switch. They just need to keep that momentum going, keep building that fan base, give us a Switch revision, and maybe in year three, I think, is the year that they should do that.
Please be a compelling revision, not just Switch XL.
There's rumors that PlayStation 5 will be a 2020 thing, and I think if Nintendo has their Switch revision ready for 2020, and it is a significant upgrade, that'd be a good time to release that. We don't want to stay too far behind the competition on a level of power.
Are we taking the bet about PlayStation 5 being a hybrid console as well?
It's not.
Sony said that they didn't want to do that.
Good.
They've given up on the handheld market. I'm convinced that they're done
Double
with that.
good.
They pumped all their resources into the PS4, and look how it's doing. That being said,
They know where they shine.
PS4 is going to be what Xbox One X is to the Xbox One. It's going to play all the same games. It's just going to be that much more powerful. They're just, it's time for the next generation. It does 4K natively,
Sold.
But again, like if I can play all my PS4 games on it, and all the games that I have digitally are just going to carry over, like that's going to make me so much more like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to upgrade. And I think honestly it'll be a higher price point, and I don't think they're going to be too terribly worried to push it through until like, okay, more people are buying it. Same with the Xbox One X. They're like, this is for people who really want this, even though it's a next gen console, That's just how I see the market moving, and I'm not upset.
That's exactly what I want from them. I don't want to see them chasing what the competition is doing. I wouldn't want to see them try and do like a hybrid system. What they have is great as it is. What I want to see is it, native 4K and, up the specs, keep up with what's going on, keep it, operating. But
they've cemented themselves as the go-to high-definition gaming platform. That's what they do best. That's what they just need to keep doing. It has shown to not work for Nintendo. Nintendo's in a strange place in the market. They have to innovate with each system, otherwise they're going to get forgotten. Nintendo just doesn't operate like those other two companies do. And
thank God, because I don't know what I'd do without my Switch.
Yeah, they serve a different purpose, and they've shown that they need to. They innovate, and we've seen time and time again where the other two companies take after those innovations in the future. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out, sometimes it does. But I kind of like that. Nintendo serves a different market, and I have reason to own a PlayStation 4 and a Nintendo Switch, and be a PC gamer. I have reasons for all three. That's the kind of world I want to live in.
Amen.
There should be some competitive overlap. We have to have that in order for things to excel and progress. But I think we're overlapped just as much as we need to. They've all found their places in the market, and now they're just moving forward with it. So
until Sega announces their next console, the Dreamcast 2.
Yeah, that new Atari box coming out.
If they put Phantasy Star Online 2 on it, I'd buy it.
Well, Sega has a big announcement tomorrow.
And it's going to be that Phantasy Star Online 2 isn't coming to the West. That's it.
Given that the announcement is coming out of Tokyo, I'm going to guess it has nothing to do with that. If it does, that's great. I'm going to guess that they're going to talk about that Sonic Racing game. But it is an announcement, so maybe it's something we haven't heard of yet.
Sonic is coming to Mario Kart 9.
They're gonna reveal Sonic and Super Smash Brothers for Nintendo Switch.
Whoa, big surprise!
I'd be okay with that.
Man, I'd be super disappointed if Sonic wasn't in Smash.
Yeah. He's part of the crew now. There's no going back. Speaking of backs, don't break them, because we're ending the show. I want to thank you guys for listening, watching. If you're on the video version, check us out next week. We might have our E3 predictions special coming up extra early and extra spicy, so definitely look out for that.
Serving up hot.
If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow me at Babababs, you can follow Logan at LoggyDoves, and you can follow Paul at Gunnysaurus. If you want to follow us as a collective, you can follow us at Breakroom Arcade on Twitter. We're also Breakroom Arcade on Facebook and other social media. If you go to our website, breakroomarcade.com, you will find links to our Discord server. Please join it, talk to us, give us your recommendations, we'll give you ours, and if you say something in the chat that really resonates with us, you might even hear it on the show. So there's a lot of incentive to do that. Anything else I need to plug? Plug.
That's the last review that has been I've been working on since we started this podcast. It's finally coming up this week. It's finally going out.
Since the dawn of time.
Yeah. And A Way Out 5 and 6 are going up this week, Monday, Wednesday. So keep your eyes peeled then.
You'll also find a new series from us. It is an ongoing series of videos called Road to Smash. Different videos and topics related to Super Smash Bros. Leading up to the launch of Super Smash Bros. On Nintendo Switch. The first video of that is already up from last week. It was Logan's video about Super Smash Bros. For Switch not being a port. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. Leave us a like and comment on those. Tell us what you want to see in Super Smash Bros. Tell us what you want to see from Nintendo's next video game system. Tell us all of that in the comments below. Leave a like on the video. It really helps us. If you're listening to this on a podcast source, such as iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, please rate us on those. It really helps our show grow. We haven't had anyone rate us that hasn't been us yet, so I implore you to help us out. You can't hide it, Paul.
We don't like our own stuff. That's lame. What kind of lame person does that?